Purple Crayon until I wised up and got smarter and thought, you know what? Nobody gives a rat's ass about Harold and the Purple Crayon except for me. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to subject these guys to a movie I'm already wholly suspect of, and a movie that I still held out a morsel for hope. This was probably the movie, not to divulge into a Harold and Purple Crayon rant. You can read that on stevepulaski.com. That'll be a fun one at the end of the year when we do our worst movies of the year. I'm just going to let you know. That'll be a fun monologue for me. But I'm going to say this. Never have there's every like 7 years or so, 5, 6, 7 years, there's a movie that comes out that's way too late, like it missed the window completely for when it was supposed to be released.
Slender Man.
Slender Man's a good one, but I like that movie. That was
Okay.
I'm one of the lone defenders of that movie. One of the first that comes to mind is Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, which I really enjoyed. But that movie, if Pilkey's dad didn't get sick and he didn't take that hiatus, that movie probably would have come out in like 2002 when it was supposed to. There was that movie. I held out optimism for it. It turned out to be great. There was, in this one, I'm going to blow your guys' mind right here. You guys forgot this even exists. Maybe didn't even know it existed. Playmobil, the movie. Held out some optimism.
God, that's right.
Held out some optimism for Playmobil, the movie. That, I think, still has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it does. It's one of the few.
You know, that one, I saw that in an empty fucking theater on a Friday, I think maybe a Friday afternoon in college. It was one of the saddest showings of my life.
You saw it in an empty theater, but you were added to a list of fucking people that the FBI watched.
I know, right? Like that was one of the handful of times when I got my ticket and the person at the concessions was like, I forgot we had that.
If there's anything I miss about old Sleepless, where we used to do 2-3 movies a night, it is when we would start off with like the big movie release and then work our way down to like the small release and then have it go up to the ticket counter and be like, yes, one movie please for whatever the hell was coming out that week, and they'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then apologies about my camera over here. I think my webcam's going, so if I disappear, my audio should still be intact. But I held out hope for Harold and the Purple Crayon and got him a jag off. That really should have been the review right there. As a big fan of the book and a big fan of the TV series on HBO Family, throwback. Yeah, that was a sobering disappointment. Made for a fun theater experience. Catherine and I had some good hushed commentary between us. It was nothing if not lively, and it was over in less than 90 minutes. So you gotta at least praise a bad movie for being short. But we're not reviewing that today. We're reviewing M. Night's Trap. We're going to talk that movie. It's been a summer of the Shyamalan dynasty. We'll talk more about that too in a few minutes. And then we're also going to touch briefly on, I really kind of just want to bring this up because I think there's some confusion with myself included at first regarding Warner Brothers Discovery shutting down Boomerang. I think there's a little bit of confusion with that I'd like to dispel, and I'd also like to give a plug to a brand new network that is taking Boomerang's place swiftly. I can't wait to see the ratings when they come out with that, though, and I'll talk more about that at the end. Obviously, you guys going to give some thoughts on that too. First things first. Normally ask how you guys are doing and things like that, but since we have a loaded show, I wanted to give Joe the floor to talk Deadpool and Wolverine. He was not here for our review last week, so I want him to say some thoughts on it, really because I know the Marvel series is close to his heart. He's the most knowledgeable of the three of us here, so I want to give you the floor to start with Deadpool and Wolverine, Joe.
Now I know like these guys last week talked about some of the things that like were shown in that movie, such as certain characters that popped up. I'm gonna say it again. I will be talking about that as well. It's been 2 weeks. If you haven't seen the movie still and you're like, I still don't want to know spoilers, just walk away for 5 minutes and then come right back. But real quick, I will try to keep this as short as possible. For me, this movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, that is, because I know we're talking about traps, so let me make that clear. Deadpool and Wolverine was basically what I wanted this movie to be. It was just fun. It was funny. And it was basically like what I could ask for in a summer blockbuster, especially a Deadpool blockbuster. It's not my favorite Deadpool. I still think 2 is still my favorite. I think it has the best story of the 3. And I think that, like, you know, just the look of that movie too is just really slick and cool looking. I really think the director, when it comes to that, when he makes stuff like Fall Guy, Bullet Train, and all these other cool looking films, and also like the first John Wick. But with Deadpool and Wolverine, I gotta say, like, it's while 2's my favorite, 3 actually might be the funniest for me. There were times I was having tears come out of my eyes from laughing. It's not necessarily all from Deadpool as well. It's from a lot of other people that pop up in this movie. One of them being Channing Tatum as Gambit, who had me dying on the floor, man, in the theater with his accent. Because as a big X-Men fan growing up, watching the Saturday morning cartoon, and even as a 28-year-old man, I'm watching X-Men 97 on Disney Plus because, damn it, it's some of the best animation Disney Plus has added for original-based programming. Gambit's always been a character I always thought was really cool, but like we'll never see the light of day with him ever again. We did see in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but it was cool to see not only Channing Tatum just do the accent, the Cajun accent so well, but also just have so much fun with the role and be hilarious with it, and just everybody bouncing off of him. Like, one of my favorite jokes in the movie is, "Who's your dialect coach?" The Minions. Like, that, that had me going. As for the leads, I mean, Ryan, this is what Channing Tatum is for Gambit. Like, he was trying to get that thing going for years and cared about the role. Ryan, Deadpool, is basically the same thing for him. This is his baby. This is basically what kicked his career to new heights. It's basically what got his aviation gin started. It's what made him the, speaking ambassador of Cricket Mobile, or Cricket Wireless, whatever the hell it's called. It's the movie that basically saved his career and everything.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, smack dab in the middle of the month, smack dab in the middle of the week. We are in the dog days of summer right now, which is very fitting because it's raining right now out here in eastern Iowa. It's probably going to rain here, I think, for like the next day or two, I think is what it says. So at least the temperature has been pleasantly cool these past few days, cooler than you'd expect in mid-August. I'm bracing for another heat wave of some kind over here, so I know it's coming. Good to be with you today. We are coming to you live and in living color to talk Borderlands, the brand new Eli Roth movie based on the video game series. I'm actually, just an FYI, I'm going to pass most of the intro. I'm only going to go about maybe a minute or two. I'm going to pass the intro off to our resident Borderlands expert, Joe, here. Has actually played the video games. How many of the games have you played, Joe? All of them?
All of them, yeah.
Dom, have you played any?
It was one of those games that annoyed me back then, but now I appreciate them. So played them at a friend's house on and off. So I'm familiar with the series, but Joe is our resident expert.
I
always liked the covers, but never played them.
There is one game I didn't play. It's the most recent one. It's a spin-off. It involves Tina's character. But I haven't played that one. I've played all the main ones. I played the pre-sequel, where it's a prequel and a sequel. And I played the Telltale spin-off of Borderlands, which is by far the best story of that whole franchise. It's an amazing one. It's really funny, and it's a really good script as well.
I have no problem discrediting myself over here, but I don't want to besmirch Dom's opinion or anything. But I think Joe's holds the most weight, at least in terms of the experiential value of these games and the familiarity that there is too. So I'm sure he's going to be in a good mood talking about this thing. So we are going to be talking Borderlands. We're also talking its dismal, absolutely dismal box office performance over the weekend. This is probably the worst performing movie of the summer, and I don't think it's particularly close. This is a movie that's going to lose a shitload of money, regardless of what other sources have told you. This is a movie that is almost to the point where first, I'll get into it during the intro a little bit more. Let's start on a positive note. Joe, how are you doing?
Work-wise, I'm getting my ass kicked this week at work. Personal life-wise, doing pretty good. I saw Metallica over the weekend. That was great. It was a really fun show. Saw some great openers. One of which Steve actually saw, coincidentally, Ice Nine Kills. Haven't heard of them before I saw them as the opener. And once I saw them, I went, oh, these guys are actually pretty cool. They do like these little horror movie tributes during their show, where it's like characters from these movies like running around stage doing stunts or just kind of dancing on stage to the music. It was really cool. I just signed up, me and a group of friends, for our softball team that will be starting later in September. So that's something to look forward to as well. Only thing that's going to suck is it basically cuts out my Tuesday from ever trying to squeeze a movie in last minute, which means I have to see these things either Thursday night, over the weekend, or Monday. If I don't see it by then, it's going to be a tight squeeze if I want to try to see it on a Tuesday. But yeah, man, other than that, other than work, personal life-wise, it's been going pretty smooth and been having fun here and there.
Good to hear that. Yeah, Catherine and I saw Ice Nine Kills. It was part of a 4-band lineup over the weekend. She's a big Ice Nine Kills fan, so she knew every song. I like them. I'm not a big metal fan. Guiltily enough, I'm really not, but they are pretty terrific. Their stage business is excellent. Their tributes to various horror movies are very well thought out lyrically and also visually, if you see their videos or if you see them on stage. Yeah, they're good. They're really good.
Yeah.
And they've come into their own recently too, and I think they've developed a legion of horror fans too, because horror fans often like heavy metal music. So they were one of a 4-band lineup over the weekend and stuff over here. In This Moment was the headliner. And you want to know how much of a non-metal fan I am? I had never heard of them until they were announced this summer.
Yeah.
So, and they're pretty big from what I understand. So yeah, great show. I'm glad you got to experience it too over at Soldier. How are you, D?
Doing all right. Getting ready for some things happening at work and then some other things beyond that. I'm being intentionally vague, But honestly, today was like a day, my one day off. Like God, 7, 8, 9. I've been at work. I had been to work 9 days in a row at least, which
Dude.
does a number on you. Even if they're half days,
Yes.
just going the drive, having to take, for me, 30 minutes to go to work and then 30 minutes back out. That's a whole freaking hour. And it does something to you mentally. But I had a day off today and did a deep clean. That's your one day off. So of course it's gonna turn into more work for home. And then yeah, so again, very mundane, boring things, but that's how I am. That's how I've been.
Oh no, I understand that. I had to pull, I think, 13 days in a row this summer too. So
Mm,
it's
mm,
tough. It mentally wears on you, especially like waking up early, the commute and whatever, because if you're working that many days in a row, there's chances that there's a couple days where it's not your usual routine either. So
mhm.
it throws everything out of whack. The laundry piles up and every other damn thing. I know how I feel your pain there and that. 'Tis the summer. Let's compound that pain a little bit and talk about Borderlands. So this is the new Eli Roth movie, and I'm just gonna give a brief overview, and I'm gonna pass it to Joe here because he's the one with the residential knowledge, as I said. This movie, obviously based on the popular video game series. Video game series has grossed over $1 billion with a B dollars since its inception, so it's a good chance you're not like me and have played the actual games before. This movie was originally shot in 2021. This was a movie that had undergone significant reshoots last year, not at the hand of Eli Roth either. Because last year, during the reshoots, Tim Miller, the executive producer of the movie, had to step in and play director. I guess not play director. That's a little insulting. He did direct the Deadpool movies, but he wasn't intended to be a director of any kind on Borderlands. Eli Roth was shooting Thanksgiving, so he could not do the reshoots to this movie. This movie is old enough that Kate Blanchett hadn't played the character Lydia Tarr by the time this when this movie was filmed. She had not played Lydia Tarr yet, which is ironic if you consider the ending of Tar, but I digress. Um, but yeah, this movie has been on the shelf for a little bit. And I knew that this movie I kind of feared that Lionsgate had an unmitigated mess on their hands when back in April, when I interviewed Eli Roth twice, the second time I interviewed him, the last question I asked him was, can we get a little bit of a tease of Borderlands, which is coming out later this summer? And he responded by saying, no tease yet. He goes, they've asked me to keep pretty tight lipped on it. I'm meeting with the marketing team to discuss how we approach forward. That did not leave me optimistic one iota. Because normally, if it was a movie, even if they hadn't had any marketing meeting, there would have at least been some kind of a more positive spin on that rather than just a blanket statement. So I was not optimistic of this movie. And then when the reviews trickled in, for a good minute, this movie sat at a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I take that as a challenge. I take that as a challenge. It's since been up to a 9. It's now at a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's easily the worst reviewed movie of the summer. Um, I take that as a little bit of a challenge because I didn't really I didn't read any reviews going in. I just looked at the score, just to kind of gauge what it was at, and I kind of take it as a challenge. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna fuck around and like this. I want to see if I like this. If I don't read anything, I'm not like swayed by the hate train. So I am very pleased to say I hated this movie all on my own volition. And I went in blind, and about halfway through, I kind of wish I was. This is a doozy we are going to be talking about today. With that, I segued over to Joe, who's got a personal connection with this series and definitely has stronger opinions than me, obviously having that experience. So, Joe, where would you like to begin with Borderlands?
You sure you don't want to pass it off to Dom and, see what he has to say before I get into this?
You're the expert,
I
my
can.
friend.
It's up to you.
Dom, I'm going to punt it to you real
Okay,
quick.
okay.
Because
Yeah,
I can imagine I
is,
might take up that whole intermission timer that pops up.
I figured.
Okay.
I honestly figured. Yeah, this movie is like the most boring fever dream. It's the most blasé dream sequence that it certainly feels like a video game, and that's not a compliment in this specific instance. and it's very floaty in a way. God, I mean, if you want to get real detailed, it's floaty in the way Kevin Hart holds that rifle, where it's like that thing has no kick to it. That thing is he's just waving that around like a toy wand, which yeah, whatever. But I'm not getting it into the nitty gritty because that would honestly be giving it way too much praise than it honestly needs. It's of all the movies here in 2024, it is probably one of the worst, but it's not the worst I've seen. So I'll cut it some slack. It's a little, it's in its craft, it's competent, I guess. And it certainly helps that Borderlands has a very distinct, as you can kind of hint at in Joe's background, it has a very distinct cell shaded style in the games themselves that that it kind of helps the argument of the game of the movie because man, some of those sets, some of those backgrounds, that is I am talking 2020 Mandalorian, we could only shoot here because we can't be on location kind of style to it, which I forgive the Mandalorian for because of that context. And they were innovating certainly with that distinct panoramic. I don't know the name of it, but you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, overall, this was a missed opportunity that's about a decade at least too late. And man, it goes through the motions of what you would think a Borderlands movie would be like, and that's not very good. There's hardly any soul here. There's hardly any staying power here. And it really sucks because this cast is actually pretty damn good. Looking at the names, right? That's already a really good cast, frankly. But in how they are in the movie, it's like, damn, there was a potential there. I don't know about the screenplay, if there was any hope whatsoever. It looks like it was really all smashed in for something kind of generic. But at least with the cast, it's like, Kate Blanchett here's got a lot of weight to Lilith that, hardly anyone was expecting. Kevin Hart, he could have been a somewhat, more interesting role, but again, just kind of subserved by the script. And Ariana Greenblatt, I feel bad because she's probably going to get a lot of flack online, but I can see her doing a Tiny Tina. I don't think anyone can do a Tiny Tina as good as Ashley Birch, who was the original Tiny Tina. She's just on another level in terms of her acting prowess, and it helps. She was an adult.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it helps when you're an adult voice actor who has years of experience playing a character like Tiny Tina.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tiny Tina is literally 16, probably was even younger while shooting. So, whatever.
Yeah.
And the rest of the cast here.
Think about it. Like, when she shot this movie, she probably didn't even shoot Barbie yet.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you're right.
Probably not.
Yeah. So overall, just a lot of missed opportunities that you wonder. It was probably a sunk cost fallacy at that point where I'm looking at the Wikipedia, but it's in 2011, Gearbox, the developers, we're talking about this movie already. So true development hell with this thing. And Joe, I don't know if you have any more history on this, but overall, I'm just going to say it's a damn shame because I do want to go back and play the games now. So, hey, mission accomplished for this movie, I guess, in terms of a 2-hour commercial that overstayed its welcome. But yeah, I think the games here have more to do with it. Have more to it than this movie does. Go ahead, Joe.
I have reinstalled actually the games after watching the movie. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Borderlands 3 sales have gone up in the last week with this thing. So, I mean, if nothing else, Gearbox is getting money from something.
That's good, at least. It's my least favorite of the 3, but, hey, that's good, at least. All right. God damn. Let me start out by saying this. You, like Dom, or even Steve even, might like this better than I do. And I'm not saying these guys like the movie. You heard what they had to say. Obviously, they're not in this movie's favor. Both are claiming it to be one of the worst movies of the year. The worst movie of the summer, even. For me, I hated this movie with a passion. I haven't walked out this pissed off at a movie in a while. And I don't try to be this mad with movies anymore because I know the productions that, some of these people go through and, what they have to deal with. My anger mostly stems, of course, from the poor direction that this movie has. So it's terrible writing, and plenty of other criticisms I'll get into. But the main thing, the thing that sets me off, and I'll get to it later, is the fact that you had the creators of this game, Gearbox themselves, and the publisher, 2K, were behind this movie the whole way through. Along with, a bunch of Sony executives, one of which is known for stepping in and taking over and having a creative control, Mr. Ari Arad. So, my anger mostly stems from the fact that all these people probably came in and took Eli Roth and put him on the bench while they just tried to assemble the movie themselves over the course of when it was shot, and chopped a lot of this movie down. This movie is definitely a rated R movie that was neutered to become a PG-13 movie, man. There are so many shots in this movie where it's clear blood should be coming out of this person. This person should be getting decapitated, something, and it's just not happening. They just CGI'd the blood out. Maybe they CGI'd, they just took out the CGI decapitation. They took out almost everything. There are so many times, too, it feels like there should be like a swear word in there or something, and they just don't do it. They probably just had Claptrap, who oftentimes has a really like funny remark and will incorporate, a funny swear into it or something vulgar. Obviously, Jack Black probably just came in and re-recorded his lines and whatnot. The characters here. Claptrap is, and don't get me wrong, I know Claptrap is supposed to be annoying, and everything, but there is a certain charm to him in the games because he's used sparingly throughout the games. He makes appearances here and there. He says something here and there. In this movie, he's treated like a minion from Despicable Me. If a scene goes on way too long, Claptrap rolls onto the scene, says something funny, does something with his little hands, screams, and then leaves the scene. And it's just like, oh, look at that little guy go. Isn't that amazing? Don't you just love him? The other characters in this movie, I actually thought Lilith was played fine by Cate Blanchett. I thought she was probably the strongest performance here. I thought Kevin Hart, they just didn't know what to do with him tonally. He starts out with the comedic thing of, I'm short, yada, 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 always yelling and everything. And then halfway through the movie, it becomes more of a dramatic performance. Ariana, it just felt like they wanted to do Tiny Tina. They just crowbarred Tiny Tina into this movie because she's a popular character and whatnot. The worst by far is Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis. And I'm not talking, I know some people have been giving it shit for the age of these people who are playing them. I could care less about that if they put in a good performance like Blanchett did. That's why I don't mind her playing Lilith.
Yeah.
But, man, dude, Jamie Lee, first off, man, you give this woman who is an Oscar winner now, who has been in plenty of movies and has done damn good performances in them, you give this woman some of the worst dialogue in the movie that's just all exposition. And that's all she is. I mean, there's a line in this movie she says at the very end, like, this person is the Phoenix, she's a siren. And the way it's delivered, I actually laughed out loud in the theater. And some people laughed with me from how bad that was delivered. But also, I mean, I can't blame her. This movie's fucking pasted together with scenes and clips and dialogue from the video games, just so fans can probably point at the screen and go, oh my god, they said the thing from the game. That's the thing from the game. No dialogue feels like it connects from one scene to the next because it just feels like, hey, we got a crowbar joke in here, like Guardians of the Galaxy ass level, like, humor of, having these people be bumbling idiots the entire time. And I love the Guardians films. That sounds like I don't. And then we just need to reference something with the games and everything. I'm not going to get into the villain. He sucks. It's a terrible, terrible job with that villain. He's forgettable, dry and everything. And in Krieg, there's no point in getting into Krieg. He was literally crowbarred into this movie as well. He literally just shows up in the movie and Kevin Hart says, hey man, you seem like a cool dude. Why don't you come help me? And that's it. The big thing about this movie is, this actually could have been a decent flick have they incorporated, I think, one characteristic from the games. And it's one thing that these games always advertise every time. And that is the guns. In every trailer for every Borderlands game, they always say 1 billion guns. And the guns are basically characters of themselves. There's guns that shoot acid. There's guns that shoot fire. There's sniper rifles that talk to you. There's revolvers that when you kill someone, they develop a complex of, oh my god, I'm a murderer. What am I doing with my life? There's little SMGs that when you run out of bullets, you throw them at people and they explode. There's shotguns that shoot the entire magazine with one trigger pull. There's rocket launchers that become a deployable turret and just start shooting stuff at random. These guns are characters. They're so iconic to the franchise. So why the hell are there only SMGs and pistols in this movie, and they don't do anything that guns in our world do? They don't do anything that Borderlands guns do. They just do what guns in our world do, and that is just shoot bullets, and that's it. They don't do anything cool. They bring a flamethrower into this movie, and I just sat there and I went, there has never been a flamethrower you can pick up in Borderlands and use, because you shoot an SMG that shoots flaming bullets. I just went like, how did the creators...
It neuters, it's like the swearing in the blood. It's like another aspect is neutered to be really, really generic.
Yes. Yeah. The action is... And there's an action sequence, and this is when I thought it was going to happen. I was like, oh, okay, they sneak down into this lair, and it's a warehouse. And there's all these crates. They're going to open up the crates, and we're going to get guns from the game. And just little, like, hey, little fun references, but you can be really creative. And it's like, they have to shoot their way out of this hideout because they got caught. But, like, they do it with all these wacky guns, and that's how they're able to overcome the horde. Nope! They just kill people. They just do it. And it's just like, oh, okay. They don't even have the characters all have special abilities in the game. Like, let's go with Kevin Hart's character, Roland. He has a sentry turret that he gets to deploy, and it does cool stuff. He doesn't do it in the movie. Krieg is supposed to become this big, gigantic dude and grow, like, one big arm, and the other arm becomes small, and he throws people around. He also is supposed to blow himself up with dynamite, and he comes back together. And it's just like, he's supposed to do, like, all this cool stuff because he's actually, like, a mutant. They don't do that in the game. Tiny Tina doesn't even really, like, she holds a rocket launcher but doesn't use it, which it's like, okay, that's cool. She throws dynamite, but it's like, come on, man. This girl is known for giving off explosions. There were so many times I was sitting there watching this movie, and I just thought to myself, how the hell do you have the creators who have made billions off these games? How the hell do you have them there? And they just decided, this is fine. We can give this to the fans. This will kickstart our Borderlands cinematic universe, as Randy Pitchford said, which I don't know what the hell you were planning to do with that, Chief, because what the hell is a cinematic universe in Borderlands? Did you just go from Borderlands 1 to 2? What the fuck is this? It frustrated me to no end, and when you get to the climax of this movie, it made me roll my eyes and just go, man, you guys really had nothing here. And I feel so bad for everyone involved, because I really, as much as, like, some fault does fall onto the writers, the performers, the directors, both of them, Roth and Tim, I really can't hold them as, like, I can't hold them as accountable as I hold the producers of this movie, because it just felt like they came in and royally messed up this movie. This is just a disaster to me on every level. And I, of course, feel this way more passionately because I know the blueprint. I've played the blueprint. I can write out the blueprint for you for this damn movie. And you just
telling normies. It's like you have to tell normies. It's like, no, I promise the game is so much better. It's so good. Like, guys, come on. It's like when your thing is finally represented in the even more mainstream or a new audience, right? Because obviously Borderlands very mainstream, but it's like, yeah, guys, it can do better. It's done better.
And
guys, just play the game.
It's worse even when you find out, like, the writer of Chernobyl and The Last of Us was attached to this, and he begged to get his writing credit taken off of it. I can't blame him. It's just like, look at how this thing turned out. It is terrible. This movie probably has so much on the editing room floor that might make it more coherent, and to me, maybe a decent flick. And it stands out even more now of how bad it is, when lately we've had stuff like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, The Last of Us, the Fallout TV show, the Super Mario Brothers movie, where it's like you have these things, whether they played it as safe as Super Mario or they did their own thing like Fallout, but still played respect to the games and everything. they at least told a story and they put care into it. This stands out. This stands out so much. It reminds me of the early 2000s when we had these terrible video game adaptations when studios used to buy up the rights for them just to make quick change. It reminds me of that so much.
I have seen some comparisons, or some people say online and on like Letterboxd and things, that this is the worst video game adaptation since the OG Super Mario Brothers from 1993.
No, I disagree with that. I disagree with that because there's a lot of them, particularly in the 2000s, that are just really incompetently made. And Borderlands, sure, but like at least it's a movie, right? You can say that.
The point that I'll make though with that, and I don't agree with that either. I saw Doom. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, exactly.
And this movie actually has some things, and the opening sequence of this movie reminded me of the 2005 Carl Urban movie Doom, in a way, the way it was shot. But going back though, the thing with Super Mario Brothers in 1993 was, if you go back and look at that movie, Nintendo had no involvement in the production of that movie. The only thing Nintendo did was license their characters out, and then they never licensed their characters again for another movie until the Super Mario Brothers movie last year.
Under their control.
Under their creative control. Now, that's one thing. You can lambaste the Super Mario Brothers from 1993 movie. I'm not going to stop you. It, like Joe iterated several times, it's more damning that Gearbox and 2K were behind this thing.
Yeah.
That's more damning. Their name is all over this.
And it's more damning with the examples I gave, and you had the creators of those things. Bethesda was involved in Fallout. Neil Druckmann was involved in The Last of Us, and Nintendo was heavily involved in Mario, and so was Sega with Sonic.
There's no excuse for it to be this bad. It didn't have to be. I don't know if anybody was expecting a Borderlands movie to be truly great. This is loathsome. This is a career killer if everybody in this wasn't already established.
Yeah.
There's a reason this sat on the shelf for a year and a half before they commenced reshoots for it. It's shockingly bad. And it almost made me wonder, like you brought up The Last of Us. It almost made me wonder, are we just in the era now where video game movies that are based on video games for adults that carry an M rating?
I was thinking this.
Are we in the realm where those need to be TV shows, and things like Detective Pikachu, Super Mario Brothers, and Sonic the Hedgehog can qualify as contained feature films, but things like these, where video games are now having more dense worlds, require 100+ hours to beat the game and explore every facet of the game? Are we at that era now of video game development where now movies like Borderlands, or even even if The Last of Us was a movie, is just infeasible?
I think yes and no, because it's like I still feel like you can craft something. I feel like he would still nail something. Like if they're able to do it with Sonic and Mario, which have no plots whatsoever, and maybe that's because it does give them the freedom to do that as a movie. But it's like
they're not bound to a world.
Yeah. I mean, but you could do that with something rated M at the very least, something that's light on story that, like, the fans of the game will just be like, hey, we're proud that, like, this is being adapted in some sort of way. I feel like you could do that, but I do see what you're saying. Like something like GTA, if they were ever to adapt that, yeah, that's going to have to be like a TV show with how long those games are and how much you got to cover.
Yeah, if they ever make San Andreas the gritty HBO Max reboot,
it could absolutely do that.
It could be a great TV show.
I
don't know about a great movie.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know about a great movie.
I think it's not even just video games. I think we're at a point in storytelling where people can in a post HBO, post Sopranos world where, that TV is now elevated, in a post Breaking Bad world, especially, right? We can take this now. People need that. People crave it. And, in this world where, hours matter, we need more hours. We need more streaming. We need more
I have
stuff.
to cut you off there. We are about to butt up against the Zoom Workplace sponsored intermission. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. This is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. I know you guys are going to have more, maybe more to say or more to enlighten, I guess, than me on this. I'll briefly say this, and I could go over. Joe and Dom have actually played the damn games. I haven't. I just read the synopses of the first three games, but Five Nights at Freddy's is finally getting a movie after a little bit of lingering. I don't want to say development hell because it's been in production for about 7 years, and that's not 7, 8 years, so that's really not a huge amount of time in the grand scheme of filmmaking, but it did go through some delays in production, though. So we're finally getting it, though, which is exciting. Five Nights at Freddy's comes out October 27th. It's based on the popular video game series. This is based on the whole franchise, right? Or this isn't like a direct adaptation of the first game, I don't think.
So, you know what, Dom? I'll let you take this one, actually, because you probably know a little bit more about the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's than I do, but I do think it is taking more than just one game.
Let me say this: I've actually never played the games, but like hands on
I thought
the
you
controller.
played them.
No. I've seen people play them. I've been in the room with people who played them, but you know me, I'm not a horror guy. And this is more like jump scare horror. That's literally what this whole thing is. It's just jump scares. That's the basis of that's the loop. That is for all 7 of these freaking things. That's the loop. But yeah, it looks to be, if not a 1-to-1 adaptation, it's certainly a straightforward adaptation. This isn't going to be like Guillermo del Toro's take on Pinocchio, where it's like, oh, we're going to make this even darker. No, it seems to be playing up all the aspects of this thing that the original did. And Scott Cawthorn, the creator, the indie developer who made the first one and pretty much all the rest of them, and did a lot of stuff to promote that. He had been a long time game developer, a devout Christian, which is kind of important because he made a lot of Christian games, and his conservative views proved to be a little problematic later on, but he dedicated, once Five Nights at Freddy's came along and became a massive hit online, he dedicated to that series, that franchise, that baby, which say what you will about how derivative the other games got, how kind of he could not capture thunder or lightning twice. However you think about that, he dedicated to this franchise, and kudos to that. He was
Back after our Zoom workplace sponsored intermission. This is Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. I cut you off there, Dom. If you wanted to finish your thought there, we're butting right up against the intermission. You got anything you wanted to add to what you were saying?
No. Kind of apropos of something is that shout out to Craig Mazin for having one of the greatest rebounds in his writing career, going from scary movie, superhero movie, identity theft, and the Hangover sequels to HBO's Chernobyl and The Last of Us. Just incredible rebound. And it's like, do not break your streak with this movie. Congratulations. Good work. Yes, you avoided disaster there. What a career.
What's funny about this movie is, again, like, if you didn't know, this movie was shot almost 4 years ago. And so you got to think, like Joe mentioned, Ariana Greenblatt wasn't even in Barbie yet. Kate Blanchett hadn't done Tar yet. Eli Roth didn't do Thanksgiving. This movie is old. Like, it's just coming out now, but there's an age factor to this movie too. And it's almost like this is coming back to haunt these people whose resumes have just started like really, truly improving. Not necessarily in the case of Kate Blanchett, but like Ariana Greenblatt, whose career is still very young, and this is almost like this black mark that's coming back to haunt them in so many words. I don't do headlines for my reviews, but if I did a headline every now and then, I'm witty. I would call this Garbage of the Galaxy. Because that's what this feels like. This feels like the Island of Misfit Toys, where Eli Roth and Joe Crombie's script, like, defiantly refuse to make Lilith and Roland and Krieg engaging personalities. They're so dehumanized, they barely qualify as archetypes. Kate Blanchett is the one person here. I give her a lot of credit because Kate Blanchett, she's not given a good script. I'm Catherine and I made the joke back and forth while watching the movie in a mostly empty theater. We kept making the joke that every time Kate Blanchett would say like shit or sigh or just like sulk, I'm like that was just her between takes. They just kept that in the movie. Like all the times that like she just is so exasperated and everything because her character's miserable having to go back to Pandora. But I will say this is a weird thing to praise somebody for. Kate Blanchett even kind of walks and has the swagger of a video game character. She kind of treats this like her Lara Croft in
She's
a
a
way.
holistic actress, like obviously one of the greatest of her generation. So you want someone younger and hotter?
Yeah. They wanted someone. Well, I was basically saying, everybody who couldn't hear me on the stream, is people on the internet were bitching and moaning that, like, she was casted as Lilith, Kate Blanchett, that is, because they wanted someone younger and hotter. Because it's like, look at the Lilith player model and tell me, like, what they really wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's funny.
Is this the most action-packed movie Kate Blanchett has ever been a part of
absolutely,
in live action? Like she's doing like flips over shit and like shooting people.
Yeah, this has to be. I'll have to do a quick scan of her filmography, but I'm willing to bet it is.
I didn't watch Ocean's 8 or whatever.
I mean, she was in the Lord of the Rings, but she didn't really do anything to that degree. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, Thor Ragnarok, but that was more just her doing powers.
Doing like this, probably like on a stage screen or whatever. Like, this is like the most I actually seen her like running. Athletic. Yeah, you had to run, had to actually like pose for like cameras and pretend to shoot a gun, shooting blanks and whatnot.
Oh, actually, no. In Tar, when she tackled that conductor, that was pretty intense.
And again, anybody who's seen Tar, like I just love the irony of her in this movie and how Tar ends. If you think about it, I don't want to ruin Tar because it's so great. Now, here's the one thing I will say. Here's the one thing I will say. Kevin Hart has the look of somebody in this movie who had to postpone a couple comedy shows in order to do reshoots. My God, does he look fucking miserable here? Yeah. Like, and I know his character is supposed to be like disenfranchised. He almost looks visibly bored. It's strange, although not unwelcome. I'm not the biggest Kevin Hart fan. It's strange, but not unwelcome to see a movie that mutes his comic energy as much as this one does. But at that point, I understand you get the name recognition, but at that point, I'm almost like, why didn't you cast him? Why didn't you get like Abdul Mateen II from Candyman? Why didn't you get somebody like that? As opposed to, if you weren't going to do anything with Kevin Hart, or we're going to get him to play this really kind of cantankerous mercenary, then why have him in it? But adding on to that, just when I thought Jacob Batalon from Spider-Man, the recent Spider-Man trilogy, his motor-mouthed moron character in Tarot was the year's most insufferable movie character. Nobody has a worse outing in this movie than fucking Jack Black in Claptrap, to no fault of his own. But that hunk of junk, man, he's bad enough. He is bad enough that rebate checks should have been given to those $40 popcorn buckets, the people that bought those things. He is dreadful. I cannot tell you how many times I wanted that thing to roll off a cliff or get shot in that wave of bullets. Like, I mean, he's indestructible, which is even worse, but he vocalizes every cheap thought he has. He provides, and I said in my review, he provides the same level of comedy as a first-time stand-up comic bombing his first act. He's awful in this movie.
It is the complete opposite of the Bowser performance he gave us with Super Mario Bros. Where that was universally loved by people. Was like, dude, he gave it so much character. The song was funny. All this, it is the complete opposite. And again, a thing they miss from the games is he's usually the more physical, like, comedic part of the game. They only kick Claptrap once in this movie, and it's like, dude, there's so many times in the games he gets blown away, he gets punted, he gets punched, he gets tossed, and it's just funny, like, it's like, because he's indestructible, so it's like they just use him for so much shit to make sure, like,
and that's part of the charm of the character. Like, yeah, he's annoying, but we get to hit him a bunch.
Yeah, and it's like They don't do that here. And
Not
it's
in this
like,
movie. He doesn't shut up, and to make him even worse, he has to fucking sing every time he performs an action. Even too.
yeah.
I'm like, you were talking about how often he gets abused in the games. Where was Robbie Gold in a cameo for this thing? like,
Bam.
it was. He was awful. He was awful, and. But I will give this movie this. Cate Blanchett's very good. I'm also going to say this. And this is usually just a compounding criticism of these large budget 9-figure movies that just flat out suck like this one. But that's not the case. This movie is not cheap looking. For what it is, I didn't think it was cheap looking. A litany of people are going to lose a lot of money in their futile attempt to give this movie some visual flair.
Yeah.
The creatures, they're underdeveloped, but like the flying dragon, the sandworm, they look really good. The guns, I know what Joe is saying about how the guns are characters in themselves and they're terribly sidelined here. The guns and weaponry are exaggerated with their colors and everything in a way that's attractive. This is a world that has no world building whatsoever. There's none. There's no rhyme or reason to anything if you're not familiar with the games, and even if you are, I feel like it's barely recognizable.
Yeah.
It looks like a vomited AI version of Mad Max in some scenes. But at the same time, though, this movie, I didn't think this movie looked bad, which I was almost expecting just by virtue of the negative reception. This movie does not look cheap.
No,
I'll say that.
I'll say this, like, and to Dom's credit, yeah, like, the later games, like, 2 started doing it, and especially 3, actually got a better art direction going, to where it's like, yes, this, like, this, like, ink style that they do and everything, this pop art style that they do, it started actually giving it a little bit more flair, where they go to, like, high-tech cities and stuff, or different environments than just a desert. The movie did adapt, I think, the look of Borderlands pretty good. There was, like, occasionally a few times I'm like, it looks a little bit cheap. Like, there's a scene where they lift up a bunch of sheets of metal, and one of the sheets really did look like rubber. It was really obvious. But the city they go to, Sanctuary, it doesn't look like anything like it does in the game, but it's a cool looking city. It's like, oh wow, like there's actually some production value to this. Especially with the extras all over the place and everything they do. I'm like, okay, like, they actually gave it some of that. When Lilith is, like, first arriving on Pandora, it's like they're nailing, like, the vast wasteland and kind of like almost like, the rundown shacks and everything that is throughout here. The only time I felt like this looks cheap, or like, this was probably part of the reshoots, was, I think, the climax and the what's it called, the sewer fight scene, because it was just like, this just looks like your average, like, warehouse sewer thing, like,
I agree.
Scenery, and the climax just looked like it was just, you could tell it was a stage. Like, I mean, a lot of it looks so fake and everything there, especially when
that seemed like a reshoot scene.
Yeah, but
really
both
did.
action sequences, I thought, I'm like, these seem like reshoots because they don't match the quality of the other sets, and also the just like how they're just progressing through these areas. It just feels like we just need to move along because, like, we're just reshooting here.
The other thing, and I'll kind of maybe parlay into closing thoughts with this, but Dom, I know you're not big into horror movies and such, but I'm going to say this too. It's like Lionsgate set this thing up to fail from the beginning. And I say that because, first off, Leigh Whannell was supposed to direct this movie years and years ago. Leigh Whannell, the same man behind Upgrade and the recent Invisible Man movie from about 4 years ago. He was also the producer and the actor of Saw and the writer of Saw, the first one. They got Eli Roth. It is beyond bizarre to see a movie where innumerable psychos are shot, slashed, maimed, and bombed, and there's not a trace of blood in an Eli Roth movie. Yep. It is beyond bizarre to me. The violence apparently was supposed to be a lot more video game-like in the original conception of this, with heads getting blown off, limbs getting blown off. Lionsgate insisted that this thing be PG-13 during the production. And in doing so, their ambition, it was like their ambition for a Borderlands movie was it to effectively please nobody. And that's the thing I do not understand. The one thing I will almost never understand when we get once a year, this is like a once a year level bomb that's been in development hell, went through reshoots, the whole 9 yards. It will never, ever make sense to me why a studio would cough up $120 million in this case for a movie like this.
Damn.
Probably pay another $100 million for P&A, print and advertising, and marketing costs and everything. Effectively making a break-even point of like a break-even point for this movie being like $250 million to curb the appeal of the intellectual property behind it by giving it a lesser rating so they cannot go as far as it wants. Hire a career horror director who specializes in gore and then make it effectively bloodless.
Who literally had like a big box office successful horror film last year.
No shit. And you know who made that movie? You know who made Thanksgiving or gave the money for it in the sequel that's being shot right now? Fucking Lionsgate. That's what I don't understand either, is that Lionsgate gave Eli Roth the money for Thanksgiving after Borderlands and then gave him money for a sequel because Thanksgiving did so well. A movie that's already so hopelessly lost in the fucking wilderness of its underdeveloped world and its complete lack of personality. And you don't even give your filmmaker that you hire, who's not a gun for hire either, you don't even let him do the remnants of what he's best at. Yeah. That's the thing I will never understand, is why a movie like this, they're so cautious and they're so worried about spending X amount, like the same amount of money on a Hellboy 3. Look that up with Del Toro. They won't give that movie money, but they'll give something like this to completely fuck it up entirely to the point where it's a franchise non-starter and a black mark on the careers involved. I almost want to give it a 1 after that rant, but sticking with my rating, I gave it stevepulaski.com. It is a 1.5 out of 4 stars for me, somebody ignorant of the video games. But still, I proved, if nothing else, that you can have no connection to the video game. You can have no connection to the series, never picked up a controller, never seen the load screen of Borderlands, and still be pissed off by the movie.
And still almost give this movie 1 star.
And yes, it is still not the worst movie I've seen in the month of August. Shout out to Harold and the Purple Crayon. We'll go Dom, then Joe for final thoughts.
Oh boy, this is not the worst video game movie ever made. Probably maybe one of the worst ones in a while, but not the worst ones ever made. Super Mario Brothers, obviously, terrible film. People will say, "Oh, there was a charm to it." Nah, it's just a bad film. Ooh, don't forget, for like
Uwe
a period
Boll.
of 8 to 10 years, Uwe Boll was the video game guy.
When you said the 2000s, I couldn't remember his name. I had to look it up on my phone.
I looked it up. Yeah, legitimately, like terrible, unconscionable films. Not even in their content, not even in like the morality of it. Just like really bad filmmaking.
I think I'm still friends with him on Facebook, so I don't know if I should say this just in case he happens to watch it. But I don't throw this word out very much. No, he's a hack.
Okay,
he's an absolute hack.
I would love to interview that man. Steve, get on it. But
you might fight me.
Look, Gearbox. If you want, I know Borderlands is the moneymaker, but if you want something, I guess a little more generic, or something like out of all of your things, right? You had Brothers in Arms in your repertoire to make a little more generic. Not that I'm saying generic is good or it should be generic, but it's like there's more of a formula there. Yeah. Borderlands is one of your most color and Brother in Arms, beautiful series. I love it. It should be, Craig Mazin should do a Brothers in Arms.
It's
HBO
the game
series
that saved them from financial ruin.
Like
all 3 games.
Yeah. But in terms of Borderlands, one of the most colorful, most attitude, to a fault, many would say, but one of the games with the most attitude. Man, way to make this really generic and really suck the soul out of it. 1.5 out of 4 stars for me, no doubt.
For Joe, send us home on Borderlands the movie, at least.
I do agree with Dom with his statement that this isn't the worst video game movie ever. I'm pretty sure, especially with Uwe Boll, I can find something worse. But it's up there, man. It's up there for me, at least. For someone who has played these games since I bought it in 2009, like it was my birthday present. I went to the store. I said I want that game right there because it has a cool giant monster you get to kill, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And I ended up falling in love with its art style. As ugly as it was, I found charm in it. I found charm as the series went on and everything, with 2 being one of my favorite games of all time. It's sad to see that none of that carried over here. Absolutely nothing. Even the stuff I said that was good, like, the set designers and everything. The set designers mainly just did their own thing. It's not like they really took scenes and iconic locations from the games. They just were like, hey, this is what they're giving us, and this is what we're going to do with it. And they did a great job, and I will give them, like, kudos to that. None of the characters represent their video game counterpart, despite Kate Blanchett, I think, doing really, really good as Lilith. But everybody else, I felt, did mediocre to really bad when you get to Jamie Lee Curtis and even Jack Black's performance. Above all else, man, the thing that just it struck me to a core was just seeing the creators' names pop up as the credits were rolling, and even before the film started, having their logo big in front of you on that big screen. Just made me go, you guys just didn't care about this. The franchise that basically gave your studio new life and saved you guys multiple times. You guys didn't care about this. And it's so frustrating to see. And the fact you will take all these greatly established people, Eli Roth, Kate Blanchett, Jack Black, all these people who have careers in working in the industry and have done great things and can do great things when you give them good material, or in Eli Roth's case, let him play with the damn R rating. The fact you give him that and don't give him shit to do and just have him dress up, stand in front of the camera just so it can look like the thing you guys created is horrible. It's horrible to do to people. This, of course, is a rating for me. This is a rating that I give mostly to the producers of this film and the people who had the creative decisions behind it that fucked over this film's production practically. This is a half-star movie for me. I hated this movie, man. This movie pissed me off.
First half-star review on Sleepless with Steve in many, many moons, I think, for many of us.
I think honestly, the last one was Woody the Woodpecker.
I think probably
that was a passionate one. That was a passionate half-star. I can feel it.
That came from the heart right there. Hey, fun fact, I'm still friends with Uwe Boll on Facebook.
And he's in the chat right now.
I'm still friends with him on Facebook. We got 13 mutuals. His profile picture is a Photoshop picture of him shaking George Bush's hand and Osama bin Laden's on the other side.
All right.
And his last post was 2 days ago. He made a video. He made a YouTube video on John Oliver and says it's called the Uwe Boll on John Oliver. And it says the show John did on RFK shows what is wrong with RFK, but also with John Oliver.
Okay.
And there you have it.
He was a maverick for the sake of being one.
That's pretty much what it is. And I looked it up just briefly on Wikipedia. I remember when this happened. There was a stopuweboll.com that was like an online petition that tried to get 1 million signatures. Remember Stride Gum?
Yeah.
Stride Gum actually said they would give every person who signed that signature a coupon for a digital coupon for a free pack of gum if it reached 1 million signatures. It did not. I don't know who at Stride Gum was like we got to do this for the people. I miss that gum too. That was one of the best gums back in the day. Stride. You remember with the S?
They must have been like.
That was one of the best gums that never lost its flavor.
They must have been like a big fan of a video game he just royally fucked up.
Yeah, the marketing guy put in hours on Alone in the Dark. And was distraught. Hey, the one thing I'll say about Uwe Boll, he never got his hands on Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
All right, that being said, we won't take too long on this. We're already bleeding to OT, but as if Borderlands wasn't awful on its own merits, its box office performance was pretty dismal as well. This is a movie that cost roughly $120 million. The budget isn't concrete. It's more of a range due to the reshoots. I'm going to estimate high because reshoots always run high. So I'm just going to say $120 million, not including P&A and marketing. But Borderlands grossed $8.6 million. It was ballparked for a $17 to $20 million opening, so way below expectations. It wasn't going to win the battle between Deadpool versus Wolverine. I think even if it was good, I don't think it was going to win the battle of Deadpool and Wolverine in its third week. I don't think really... I might be out on this because I did not care for the trailer and I don't know much about it, but I didn't care for the trailer. It didn't show me shit. I don't really care to get ensnared in this whole thing because it's become like a hot button thing online. I don't know if anybody saw It Ends With Us being that big of a success out of the gate. That movie this weekend. I didn't want to touch that movie. I don't know what it was about that thing.
I knew it was gonna be a big hit.
What's up?
Because I knew it was gonna be a big hit because of the friends I have that are women, and they read the book and they were going cuckoo for this movie because also Blake Lively was in it. Like, one, it was a book adaptation of a really popular book, but also Blake Lively was in it.
Yeah, I knew Blake Lively would have the star power. I guess I just didn't see it making 50 million this weekend. Twisters is still kicking at third place after a month in release. Then you got Borderlands opening at fourth. Now, here's the thing. I don't believe this. I'm just gonna flat out say there's not a lot of things like things that I just dismiss outright. But I was looking at like this movie and the high cost it had to make, and I was reading about it when I was writing my review. And apparently, according to Lionsgate, according to the hands that fucked this thing up, international pre-sales, the ticket sales that are in other markets around the world where this movie's not been released, reportedly covered 60% of the production cost. I don't believe that to be true. I don't believe that to be true. Now, I don't know how this is going to do in like China. I don't know how this is going to do in Asia and other markets that are very big on video games and things like that.
It's very generic, so it might do well.
I don't know, but I don't think this thing sold well enough to cover 60% of its budget. I don't think that to be true. It's already opened in international, or it's $8 million in America so far. Factoring in some international markets, I think it's out in the UK and some other regions. It's at a grand total of $17 million, which is what it was expected to make in its opening week in America alone. This thing, I don't see this thing. This thing is going to lose a shitload of money. This is going to lose probably $140 million. And before even anybody questions me on that, Disney's Wish, which was budgeted similarly, lost $130 million. And that movie technically made its production budget back. So I don't see this thing making money. Well, I don't see this thing coming close to not being a cataclysmic bomb and probably the biggest failure of the year. And you know what? Like, nothing upsets me more than when a good movie does poorly at the box office for one reason or another. That's why I was really happy to see Longlegs sort of defied the convention of horror movies and stuck around much, much, much longer than I think even the most optimistic prognostications thought. And it's still in over 1,000 theaters in its fifth week of release. This thing, though, I have sympathy for Roth because I think he's a good guy. I have sympathy for the cast because I know they're all very talented. I don't have sympathy at all for Lionsgate and the executives that fucked this movie up the same way the people behind Harold and the Purple Crayon fucked up that movie too irreparably. Me and Catherine, she never saw the HBO Family show, which is okay. Nobody did, I think. Watched the first three episodes of that show last night, and I think they watched 10 minutes of the first episode, and then they decided to go make the movie. That's what I think they did. But anyway, that's beside the point. I have no sympathy for those two. I hope the Lionsgate executives behind Borderlands, and the Columbia Pictures executives behind Harold and the Purple Crayon. Inflation's a bitch these days. I hope that each and every one of them got to sell off one of their vacation homes because of what they did to both of these franchises. What say you, Dom? Anything to add about the box office analysis of Borderlands?
Just a mess. Just a complete miscalculation born from unnecessary non-risk taking, or like, I just don't understand it. And it's just sad all around because video games have been on a hot streak in well, I take that back because I'm thinking like, Uncharted, Rampage,
Five Nights at Freddy's
mid, Five Nights at Freddy's is mid, but the bar has been raised from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So it is sad to see us stumble this big, this costly, and may hurt the cause in the future. Not that I'm, it's a cause that I'm too passionate about, I could go either way with it. I think, video games can stand on their own as just self-contained works of art. I don't need to see it on live action,
Yeah.
which was the pitch for these studios way back in the day, where it's like, hey, video games, but they're dumb. What if we put it in a movie, in a theatrical film? That's how we make it serious, which is unfortunate. Um, Probably the biggest case of where the two have met so well, the two mediums have met so well, is The Last of Us, where that game in and of itself is just so cinematic to begin with, and such a beautiful work of art there. But yeah, in terms of the money, it's just sad and unfortunate. And really, I'll just pass it to Joe, because I really hope the next whatever they come up with next is gonna do much better.
I will say, kind of going off the last thing you were saying there about like the mediums meeting and whatnot. My favorite ones have been the ones like Castlevania on Netflix, where it's like it's animated, of course, but also like they kind of just take little bits and pieces and do their own story with it, and it's just like because they wanted to tell something there. I find that to be the best of both worlds, where it's like fans of the games get to see their characters get adapted into like some type of like medium that like they can watch, maybe show their friends, show family, whatever it is. As well as like, hey, it's also really good. It's like that's the big bonus one. Yeah, I'm dude, I'm not surprised this was gonna bomb this weekend, because I just felt like people were still like, if you were going to see an action movie this weekend, whether you were a video game fan or not, you're probably going to see Twisters. You're probably going to go see Deadpool and Wolverine. Your girlfriend dragged you to go see It Ends With Us. So there was so many other things. If you got kids, you're going to see Despicable Me or Inside Out. Because even though this is rated PG-13, your kids looked at this and went, I don't want to see that. I'm not surprised at all. My theater had 3 other people in it. That's not including me and my 2 other friends. And those 3 people, funny enough, as we were leaving the theater, we ran into one of those guys that like basically does like the surveys for studios after the film and everything. And I took the
no
survey.
shit.
Yeah.
No shit. I never even had that experience. Lucky you.
Yeah. We ran into those guys and they gave me like a little mini iPad and I filled out the form. I gave this movie a 1 and I listed my reasons why and whatnot. And I was telling the guy too, I'm like, so like, how many people have you surveyed for Borderlands? And he's like, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. You're like number 15, 17. And I'm like, wow. And today's the release. And he's like, yep. And he's like, I'm not surprised. Movie looked like, ass and whatnot. I'm like, wow. I'm like, hey, by chance, how many people did you survey for It Ends With Us? He's like, dude, I wish I knew how to talk to women, because I probably could have gotten so many numbers. Shout out to that guy. Hopefully he didn't have a horrible weekend telling people, what'd you think of Borderlands? And they told him to go fuck himself or something. Like, I'm not surprised. And my Steve, I echo what you said exactly. Like, this is a big fault on the executives. I said that in my review. I won't reiterate it again. That's all I have to say about this. I know we're in OT. I got nothing else more to say. I just wanted to share that fun story.
I like it. We will be back next week for Alien Romulus. I got outvoted by these guys over here.
Although I feel bad because I can't be there for that one.
Yeah, there's no Dom next week, so it'll just be the gruesome twosome of Joe and myself for next week with Alien Romulus. I guess I'm looking forward to it in a way because Fede Alvarez. Alvarez is the director. Fede Alvarez was behind a couple of really good horror movies, not including the Evil Dead reboot, which is better than you remember. Go watch it again. And both Don't Breathe movies. Not the second one, but the first one was very good. Fede Alvarez, though, very talented director. I think this movie's going to be gory, so I'm excited for that on the principle of that, too. Stayed away from reviews. Don't really know what people are saying on it, but looking forward. Seeing it tomorrow with Catherine in the afternoon. Hoping for a really good movie. Until then, that's our show, though. Really appreciate you watching, as always, and hope you enjoyed us eviscerating Borderlands, because that was very cathartic, I know, for me and probably Joe and the most neutral party, Dom, over here as well. Yeah, it really explained why Eli Roth did not say much about that when I asked him about that. It concretized a lot. That's our show today, though. We will be back next week. Joe and I will, at least, with a review of Alien Romulus. Until then, for myself, Joe Viso and Dominic Guanzon, this has been Sleepless with Steve.